All right, so we managed to get this opened. Well, it was already open. Had a little cork failure. Well, somewhat, but we got it open. So tell us where we're going next.
So next we are going to go from South Africa, go back to the Northern Hemisphere,
Okay.
and go into Burgundy. And we're going to go into, along with Dijon, the capital of Burgundy, in Beaune. And, the Clos de Mouche vineyard, it's a Premier Cru vineyard. There are no Grand Cru vineyards in Beaune, sadly. But if there were, I personally think the Clos de Mouche would be one. They make outstanding Chardonnay, as well as outstanding and long-lived Pinot Noir. This is a special bottle for me, as this is one that, my brother-in-law, his parents really loved wine. And when they passed away, his mother is like, I want Max to have some of these because I know he would share it with people who'd appreciate it. And that's what wine's about, sharing it with people that will, like minds, right?
Sure.
And that who would really, there would be good conversations about it. So 1985, a great vintage in Burgundy. This is really, for me, every time I open this wine, like I get something different, and it's delicious.
So we talked just a little bit briefly just now about some other wine regions around the world. Where are we specifically in Burgundy? You talked a little bit about Dijon being the capital, but where is Beaune in?
So Beaune is in the Côte de Beaune, and within the Côte d'Or, right, the Golden Slope. It is right south of Corton, like the Corton Grand Cru, there, and it is really the capital of the Negociants, right?
Okay.
It's a big wine city across the board. It's not a big city, but it's what happens there is really important. And it's also the home of the Hospice de Beaune, where they have the charity every November, and one of the most beautiful buildings in the world as well, like the beautiful roof and really kind of culturally important part of Burgundy.
So 1985.
1985.
You talk about snapshots and kind of the picture that this takes, in this bottle of all the things that were going on in 1985, in this specific place, in this very specific parcel, right? I was not born yet. So do you remember what was going on in 1985?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty young in 1985 as well, but I do remember certain things. I do remember Ronald Reagan's inauguration in 1985. I do remember watching Live Aid, and I forgot that it was 1985. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's like watching that on television was a big memory. Being the 8th of 9 kids, I had a lot of older siblings, so they turned me on to a lot of music, and I had some siblings in high school then, so of course that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
What else did we have?
The launch of Windows 1.0. How about that?
Which I did not. That was a new one for me. That was a.
And so it's just crazy to think about this grape juice here.
A young Bill Gates.
A very young Bill Gates. I don't know. It just blows my mind to drink wine this old.
Me too. And it's it's for me. I love it when it's in such good condition, right? Where you still get the fruit. Like the fruit is still really there.
For sure.
You get that like dried cranberry and dried strawberry and like kind of pomegranate. But then there's like that it's the autumn right now, so you get that like crushed dried leaf aroma. The like kind of rose petals falling on the ground. Then on the palate, it's just so lovely. It still has great acidity. Again, velvet's the theme, right?
Super smooth.
Like super smooth. But for me, when I taste it, I just think of the harvest party that folks were having when they picked the grapes. How hard everyone was working when they were picking the grapes. Yeah. The decision on when to harvest. It's like, okay, it's a good year. The weather, it's like, are we going to go early? Are we going to go a little bit later? When's perfect ripeness with the grapes? Going through what wine grower tasting the grapes? Like, which rows are we going to pick? All of those things happened that year.
Right.
And there's so many people that went into this bottle ultimately being here between you and me right now,
Right.
you know, and that's part of the story too, right? The journey, the human journey, and how that's involved with the bottle of wine.
You said dried strawberry. That's, you start to drink wines this old, you get into those notes that you don't typically experience in other wines.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to get those tertiary dried fruit notes from wines that are 2 years old. And I feel like that can sometimes be off-putting. I mean, I think your quote unquote average wine drinker isn't going to be drinking a 1985.
They probably won't like it. Right.
Because these flavors and profiles are very unique, and you don't come across them very often.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also one of those things too, right? Like at the end of the day, it's about what you like to drink. And at this point in my career, I've seen a lot of people who would order an older wine, spend a lot of money on it, and then ultimately be really disappointed because they didn't necessarily know what to expect. And then they would have been happier with something younger, something different. For me, I always viewed it as, after had that happening a few times, the conversation was always about, what sort of wine do you like?
Yeah.
Right. And like, what sort of flavors do you like? And what are you looking for? Before I would let someone go down that path ultimately. I hate to say that, have someone go down that path.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a couple of times throughout these conversations with wine, and we have a unique opportunity to talk to someone who has, ascended to the top of the wine world, let's call it. Wine knowledge, wine education, and wine service.
Always a student, man.
But always a student.
Yeah.
Fair. But when you talk about guiding someone through that journey of picking a wine at dinner, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what it's like to have that conversation. And maybe you can help the listeners feel a little bit more comfortable about having that conversation. I feel like there's a stigma around sommeliers and
Totally.
and engaging with them and trying to figure out, where you want to end up. And
Yeah.
I think you kind of started us down this conversation very perfectly to say that you're guiding these customers on their journey to picking a wine.
Yeah. The most for me, and like what I learned when I was younger, I was maybe a little bit more egotistical, but the world has a really great way of making you humble. With that, I learned that the best thing to do is to always find a wine that someone loves. And then if you're not doing that, you're ultimately not making them happy. And the number one goal we were talking about before is making people happy. This is what we choose to do in hospitality as a career, is to make people happy and elevate their experience, right? So to do that, I learned a few things, and that's what sort of wines do you like? It's a pretty simple question, right? Right? And like people, number one, don't ever be tense or nervous about a sommelier, because they're there to make your experience better. So be honest. What sort of wines do you like? It doesn't matter if you like sweet wines. It doesn't matter if you like really fruity wines. It doesn't matter if you like really austere. Like, tell them, because they're going to find you the best bottle of wine that they have that you will like, because they want you to be happy. And I think that's the key thing. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know a lot, but what I do know is that these are the flavors I like. Right?
And then you get to do what you love to do.
Exactly.
And give them all the options.
And it's the same thing on a menu, right? Like, you're going to order the thing on the menu that you're really going to like. You'll take recommendations, right? But at the end of the day, a great server will also try and understand what your taste is.
That's awesome.
So, that being said, Marcus, what sort of wines do you like?
Ooh.
And let me see if I can think of a recommendation for you.
I love very balanced wines.
Okay.
I don't want any part of, I want complexity,
Okay.
but I want balance. I don't want anything to feel like it's overpowering. I want, in every sip, I want to discover something else. Typically, I'm going to want, no, that's not fair. I was going to say I want a red wine, but I love all the grapes. And I want sparkling, I want white, I want red. But let's just say for the time being, we'll take a red wine. I want something that I can eat with a variety of different foods.
Okay.
I want something to eat at the beginning or to drink at the beginning of the meal, the middle, and at the end. I want structure. I want medium to full body,
Okay.
somewhere in between. And I want a long finish. I want something that keeps me thinking about it. And I do want a terroir driven wine.
Okay. All right. So with that being said, do you prefer more fruit forward wines, or do you prefer more kind of where kind of combination where it's secondary aromas dominant with fruit also playing a
Yes, I want
strong
fruit to
role.
be present. I do not want it to be first.
Okay. So in that world, you have a preference for European wine.
100%.
Okay. And within that, it sounds like you probably are not, the Rhone Valley is probably not one of your, Southern Rhone's probably not one of your favorites.
Not one of my favorites. I do enjoy it,
Okay.
but not one of my favorites.
But going within that, I would say probably Burgundy you enjoy. Maybe like Nuit Saint-Georges or like Von Romanet,
Well,
right?
That's good.
And then you probably like the Piemonte and like Barolo, Barbaresco. But then you probably are like adventurous and also like the wines from like the Etna, Mount Etna in Sicily.
I do.
Those would be some areas that I would guide you from our conversation.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Well, it's funny you say that. Just behind us, not too far behind us, we have a lovely bottle of Barbaresco. What else is over there? We have a Beaujolais over there.
so the Morgon, yeah.
We don't have something that would really be right down the fairway for me personally. Is a Left Bank Bordeaux. That's, I mean, if I had one more meal, it would probably be a Left Bank Bordeaux. Now, even saying that, there's a lot of different, as you know,
A lot of
very well,
variants within that. Yeah.
you know, for some reason, I know the reason. I've fallen in love with Saint Julien because I've had my feet in the vineyards there,
Yeah.
and that had just completely changed. The way that I saw those ones. I loved them before, but then putting my feet in the dirt there and seeing the vineyards of some great wines that I've tasted, Saint-Estèphe as well. But I have been diving into Italian wines a lot more. And we do.
So I missed out on Bordeaux.
You missed out on Bordeaux.
I should have went to Bordeaux.
But we have been spending a lot of time in the Piedmont.
Yeah, cool. So do you have a favorite chateau in Saint Julien?
Yes, Chateau Lagrange.
Nice.
Bechevel.
Yep.
And Saint-Estèphe, Montrose.
Okay.
Gosh, where else do I?
I should have brought some Bordeaux today.
No, it's okay, man. We're pretty fired up about this. That brings up an interesting point too. It's just like traveling. You talked about how wine gets you in this mode of thinking about travel, and I think there's so much travel that we can do without getting on a plane.
Exactly. Yeah.
When we get to drink wines like this, I mean, we've already traveled to South Africa.
Yep.
Now we're here in Burgundy.
Yep.
It's like you close your eyes and you smell these wines and you take a taste, and it's, for me, having the luck and the fortune to have been in some beautiful vineyards, it's really easy for me to visualize myself in these vineyards.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful thing about wine, being able to travel without getting
No,
on a plane.
I'm with you, and hence why wine became so popular during the pandemic too, right? Like when no one was really able to travel, that is an ability that was one avenue to kind of explore the world in a lot of ways.
Max, I drank a lot of wine
Yeah.
during the
Yeah,
pandemic.
you weren't the only one. I was there with you.
Holy
Yeah.
smokes! I drank a lot of wine.
Yeah.
A lot of great wine. I was glad that I was in France during that time,
Yeah.
but certainly gave me an opportunity to explore a lot more wines. I think, at least in the way that I would have wanted. Um, being there. I don't know. I just very fortunate to have some great friends, um, and built that community in a very trying time. But
Yep.
we had a lot of good wines together, and I'll still think back at those weird, difficult days during COVID. But I'll still think about them with a smile because I know that we've had a lot of moments shared over wine during that time.
Yeah. And I think that was, one of the saving graces, right? I, that I, at that time I was working for an importer, and we were checking in with our wineries all over the world, and that was actually a really interesting experience for me. So having these meetings with like winemakers in Italy and Australia, in South Africa, and like just checking in with everyone. And then doing these like virtual tastings with them. I don't think I left a 3 mile radius for a whole long period of time, but I was connecting with everyone all over the world through wine, right? And that was a neat experience for that time period. But I feel really fortunate now that I get to make a living traveling around the world, getting to know people, building friendships and relationships around wine, right? And that is just super meaningful to me.
What are some of the connections that stand out to you that you've made through wine?
Yeah. So the cool thing, because I don't work in restaurants anymore, but working for a winery like Bond, I'm able to connect with so many different sommelier communities, and really some of the most like meaningful for me, like they're not fancy by any means, but with our importer in Thailand, like both visits that I had, we had casual bring your own bottle blind tasting lunches or dinners with the sommeliers in Bangkok, and like just hanging out with them, shooting the shit, blind tasting. You're like, all right, let's sit. Like we're all like giving our thoughts on wines. Like, is this Chenin Blanc, or is this from the Savoie, or is this from the Jura, right? And just like talking about wine, and going to all these different countries and hearing their like the palate that they grew up on, right? Like the fruits they ate, the foods that they have. Their way of describing wine, like, is an education to me, right? And it's like, whoa, yeah, totally. I would have never thought that, but tamarind, you are 100% correct. Like, or like turmeric and ginger, and like you like all of these kind of tasting notes that, for me, I've brought in my own personal repertoire, but just that connection of folks who, have a shared passion in wine. We've worked in the same industry. We're there to make people happy.
Yeah.
And it like I can get emotional thinking about that, and yeah, it's when I wake up in the morning that like those are the experiences. I'm like, this is why this industry is so amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One question that we love to ask, Max,
Yep.
is if you had to share this specific bottle of wine, this bottle, this vintage, with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
Well, this would be a simple one. In life, people you love pass, and as I never got to see my older brother as an adult. He passed away when I was 14. So I think, and he loved cooking. He loved things like that. And I think it would be cool to be with my other brothers and my sisters, and my dad, who also passed, and one of my another sister passed last year. Sorry, I'm not meaning to be depressing, but it would be really cool to have an opportunity to, share a bottle of wine like this.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, cheers to him.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. How about you?
Given that it's 85, I'll go with my homie Matt Roberts. He'd appreciate that.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. 40 years. And a wine, like you said, that's still, holding up great. Oh, no, man. I just want to drink more old wine right now.
Me too.
Like, I feel bad, but if I see a bottle of wine, I'm not the snobby, but like I want the age because of that story and because of the journey that this wine has been on for that long, right?
Yep.
And like, again, just things that you experience in this glass of wine that 90+% of people never experience because they're not diving into wines this old,
Yep.
or have access to wines this old.
And that's the thing. It's a really privileged thing, and we're all very lucky to be in this position to try these things, right?
Absolutely.
And that goes into every day. I do tell myself when I wake up, I'm like, I am incredibly lucky, and I need to be incredibly grateful for how lucky I am.
Well, we are extremely grateful to have you on the pod with us this evening. Thanks for being here. But
No, thank you, man.
I want to go back again.
Okay.
Germany.
Okay. Yeah.
Tell me more about where your family's from in Germany.
My dad's from Schweinfurt,
Okay.
and Schweinfurt, literally the pig crossing. Funny story though, my dad's my grandfather and his father and his father's father owned the only butcher shop in Schweinfurt, which is the pigs crossing. It's within that there's a long tradition that my dad's cousin and his family, they owned like the wine bar restaurant there. So there is this tradition on my dad's side of the family going back and going through. I've just been reading this family tree and book on my family's history that my my cousin wrote.
Okay.
And restaurants and specialty foods going back to the 18th century, which is crazy to think about, right? But yeah, it's Schweinfurt and Franconia, beautiful wine region. Sylvaner is the main grape variety there and makes wonderful wine, increasingly some great Pinot Noir as well from there. Yeah. And then my mom grew up in the Thüringen Wald, so the state right next to Franconia, and Franconia is the northern part of Bavaria. And then in the Thüringen Wald, she ended up on the other half she ended up in communist East Germany. So she and her dad escaped after he got out of, he was an anti-communist politician, so he was imprisoned for 3 years. He got out and then they escaped, but leaving one of my aunts and one of my uncles and their families over there. So that was another experience as a kid, having the opportunity to go over and visit communist East Germany and visit my relatives there, which was a talk about humbling, right? And seeing a very different part of the world, and particularly seeing people who you're related to who, just live a very simple life. All the cars were the same. They're all 20 years old. Go to the grocery store and there's like 3 or 4 eggs. Like everyone grew their own food, and but at the same time, people were still happy too. Yeah. Those experiences were really important for me as a kid.
So I don't know much about this region, but I think it's not far from where I was.
From Bayreuth, exactly.
Yeah.
I was just going to bring that up. So
I got to live in Bayreuth. My first experience living in Europe. And it sounds like that's not far from where your family was.
Not too far away. My grandfather on my mom's side grew up in Bayreuth, and that family lived there for a long time, and the home of Richard Wagner. And, the famous music festival every year. But a beautiful, beautiful place. And you were telling me about that before, how waking up on a Sunday, everything's closed. You can't buy anything.
That was my welcome to Europe moment. I got over it quickly, but it was definitely a tough awakening, literally.
So for you, you not only like have traveled a lot, but you've lived and and were on teams in lots of different countries with lots of different languages,
Yeah.
right? I may be wrong, but Greece, Poland, Germany, France,
Ukraine,
Ukraine.
Macedonia, Romania.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's everything.
So
Israel. Did I say Israel?
you didn't say Israel.
Israel as well.
So as far as being a team builder, like those must be amazing experiences. Like, what are the biggest things you've learned from those experiences?
Yeah, I'm glad that you made that distinction, right? Of like traveling a lot of different places, but then living somewhere, spending a year or more in one of these places that's so different. And where you have to, and then specifically, with my job being a professional athlete there and playing on a team, like trying to figure out how you can come together with people from literally all over the world. And even when I played in Germany, you got a German coach, you got a couple American players, you got a couple German players, but then you may have someone who's from Serbia and you may have someone who's from Croatia. And, it's like you're trying to figure out how all of these different puzzle pieces come together. And, when you think about wine, you mentioned this earlier, can we slow down, share some wine, and understand each other, get to know each other? And that's something that we had to do every single season. We had to figure out a way to come to an understanding of our teammates. Who are you? How are you motivated? What can I learn about you that's going to help us work better together on the court? I was very fortunate to discover high quality beer in Bayreuth. And that was something that definitely brought us together.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Pinot Noir in Germany. That's something that a lot of folks don't think about, but some fantastic Pinot Noirs coming out of Germany.
It's the third largest grower of Pinot Noir in the world.
But I don't hear a lot of people talking about it.
No.
At least not here.
Yeah,
So,
no, I mean, go to Baden-Württemberg and the Pfalz, Franken, even like on the western part of the Rheingau. Pretty amazing Pinot Noir. And
great stuff.
we're just seeing the beginning of it.
Right. But again, just to get back to your question, it was an incredible opportunity to learn that skill, which I truly believe is a skill of connection, right? I think it takes that genuine curiosity. I want to learn about you. I want to know who you are so that we can better work together. And, as you mentioned, in this kind of disconnected world we're in right now, I just wish that there was more of that. Yeah. And that's why I'm so grateful for wine.
And I don't know if you've had the same experience, but I mean, you were living abroad for a long time. I just travel a fair amount. For me, what I see is that we are have so much more in common everywhere around the world than we have things that are different, right? And that like we don't necessarily realize how connected we are, and really how we're all kind of like striving for similar things. And that's always my takeaway, where I'm like, yeah, okay, like we are one global community, and like that really is the reality.
It's a beautiful thing when you discover that.
Yeah.
And when you come to understand that, I think it completely transforms the way that you think and the way that you think about other people, the way that you walk through life, the compassion that you have for other people. And again, just that curiosity to understand other people, because like you said, we are more similar than we are different.
Totally. Yeah.
Someone else who makes me think about that same thought, Max, is Gary Crunkleton. And I'd like to say thanks to Gary and the Crunkleton for your support of this podcast. A place where we go here in Chapel Hill where we absolutely feel that energy of connection. We know that there's a community there, and I think that Gary and his team have done such a great job of exactly what you said, right? Like, how do we highlight how we're alike? And that we all are looking for the same thing. We all want to be loved. We all want to be heard. We all want to be appreciated and cared for. And we want to connect with others. And that happens there. And so very grateful for the Crunkleton. Max, what is it about what is it about your role now at Bond that gets you jumping out of bed in the morning and just super excited about, another day at work?
The people I work with, the wines, the wines that that the wine growing team makes each vintage, the people that are the fans and patrons of the winery, the sommelier community that supports it, the really what the Harlan family's done is really remarkable. I think it's we're in this beautiful part of Napa Valley. They built it slowly, with focus. We work on a 200-year business plan,
Wow.
where decisions are made very, very slowly, with a lot of intention. And additionally, within that, we all have roles where we can laser focus in on the things that we do well. And I don't know a lot of other companies that do this, but you talked about being pulled in lots of different directions. The way that we operate is having specific people do specific roles that they can really master and do at the highest level. Whereas, that would be one aspect of someone else's job, right? And so I find that to be a beautiful thing, right? People really fine tuning their skill set at something that they're good at. And they bring in so many talented people that I have the opportunity to learn from, and work with. And, when you're in an environment like that, it's hard not to get out of bed and be inspired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have not had the opportunity to taste a wine from Bond. Maybe there's somebody out there that has. I hope
Yep.
there's somebody out there that has.
Yep.
But for those who have not had wines from Bond, what would one expect
Yeah.
from that experience?
So we have 5 different single vineyards. We're terroir focused across the board. And, the way we came about is, Bill Harlan had a trip in 1980 to Burgundy and to Bordeaux, put together by Robert Mondavi. And he fell in love with the idea that, it's not necessarily about the grape, but it's about the vineyard. And the vineyard is what has the character that comes out in the wine. So from that trip, he started working in Napa Valley, started working on Harlan Estate, then working with Bob Levy, the founding director of wine growing. And together, they started working 40 different vineyards up throughout Napa Valley, trying to understand the valley itself. After years of making wine from these vineyards, 2 of those really stood out. They're like, wow, so these have the character we're looking for. Hillside vineyards, close to the bedrock, not high elevation necessarily, but coming off the valley floor in many ways. And they're like, let's create a winery that is focused on terroir and focused on showing the diversity of Napa Valley. So Napa Valley's 30 miles long, 5 miles wide, 33 different soil types, elevations going from 0 to 3,000 feet.
Wow.
And it's one of the few places in the world where you can fully ripen every single year Cabernet Sauvignon. So we use Cabernet Sauvignon as the lens for these 5 sites, much like Pinot Noir is the lens for Clos de Mouche, or Romanée Saint-Vivant, right? So, through that time, we started in 1996, we were founded. We have our 30th anniversary next year. 1999 was our first vintage. Since the 80s until now, we've worked with over 120 single vineyards, understanding them, getting to know the soil, making wine from them to narrow it down to the 5 that we have today.
120.
120.
Down to 5.
Down to 5.
Wow.
So it's, talk about intention. Mm-hmm. The intention was really to find these vineyards that like have resonance, right? That have something. It's not just really great wine, but there's an energy underneath the wine that comes from the vineyard itself. So it's not necessarily something. Remember, I mentioned so many words that you can't put words to it. Mm-hmm. It's a resonance within the wine that you feel. Ultimately, this is for me, right? And Corey, who's been with the winery since 2001, he started as an intern.
Wow.
Bob Levy was his mentor. Then 2012, he started making the wines. He took over as managing director in 2021. Like those are the things he's focused on, like understanding the energy of the vineyard and coaxing that out, and having it resonate within the wines itself. I should have brought a bottle.
No,
but
it's okay.
So next time we're together, I'll be sure to do that. But with these 5 vineyards, we have 2 in the Vaca Mountains, right in the east. One is 9 acres, Quella. The other one's 7 acres, Melbury, one of the flagships. They're on the more kind of delicate and svelte side, or more elegant side, if you would. You have softer tannins, more round mouthfeel, but just wonderful structure to them across the board. On the valley floor, we do have a hillside though, but it's on the valley floor in St. Eden in the eastern part of Oakville. There you start getting a little bit more powerful tannins, more elevated acidity, this wonderful kind of herbal aromatics, and just great structure and longevity. And then that's kind of a bridge from elegance over to power. And then the power, you get into the Mayacamas, 2 vineyards in the Mayacamas, Vicina, which is an eastern-facing vineyard, 11 acres. That and St. Eden are the 2 largest. You get these just wonderful, powerful tannins up front, but balanced by fresh fruits, herbal aromatics. There's kind of like a wise wisdom and cool confidence in that wine. And then Pluribus, kind of referred to as the eccentric out of them all. It's the only one that's high elevation, between 1,100 and 1,400 feet. And that is, it smells like the California woods, right? Like redwoods and evergreens. You've got wild sage and chaparral, dark fruit, powerful mountain tannins, and just really exceptional. So all the wines, you get to see how through one grape, you take a journey through the terroir of Napa Valley in a lot of sense. And it's every vintage, like I said, you have these 5 different snapshots of what that vintage is like. And it's just endlessly fascinating. And when you get to taste these wines and become familiar, you get very fine-tuned into their kind of their character, their feeling, their energy, and the way that relates in many different environments.
That's great. Well, I look forward to trying one of these.
Yeah, likewise, man.
Hopefully sooner than later.
Yep.
Max, I think you have, in your role and in your journey, you've had the opportunity to talk a lot about wine and to meet a lot of people through wine. Mm-hmm. Is there something that you don't get to talk about, or that people don't ask you about wine that you want to mention?
Why is wine important? And I think we've covered that right today, but why do we spend so much time talking about wine, working with vineyards, making wine lists, people writing about wine? There has to be something that is really meaningful there. And the thing that's meaningful, really, I think we've talked about this whole time, is that connection, art, inspiration, elevation from the everyday, and just the vast interest and exploration of all of these regions and places and grapes and this 8,000 years of history. Wine is important and can bring so much to the enjoyment of life. I think that's something that I talk about, but people don't ask. So maybe people don't want to know. But I think in this time period when there is this, kind of anti-alcohol movement, we all know alcohol in excess is not good for you,
sure,
right? And like we all try and live healthy lives. I try and live a healthy life. But, part of a healthy life is also enjoying great things. And I think one of the most beautiful things in the world, apart from being in the wilderness and great music, and I think they're all on par, is wine.
Well, Max, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. We're, again, just honored to have you. We appreciate you shedding so much light on all the knowledge that you've brought to us this evening about wine, but really, to your point, telling us why wine is important and really highlighting the connection and all the beautiful things that wine does to help us get to this ultimate whole goal of being happy.
Well,
Cheers.
Cheers to you, Marcus, and thanks a lot for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's an honor, my friend.
Thank you.